Brady Cat here, mystery solver and biggest cartoon fan of all time. Today we look at the Incredible Hulk 1982 animated series that was a whole lot of fun back in the day, even though they only created 13 episodes.
Hang loose, heroes, 'cause here we go.
The series was more closely based on Marvel Comics than the Bill Bixby Lou Ferrigno live-action series that ended the same year this came out. The cartoon series had comic characters like Rick Jones, Betty Ross, Major Talbot, and General Ross, although Rick and Betty had different hairstyles from the comics, and Talbot's first name was Ned instead of Glenn, and given the nickname Noodlehead Ned. Two other characters were added, Rita and Rio, who run the local restaurant near Gamma Base. The series ran on NBC as part of The Incredible Hulk and the Amazing Spider-Man. The Hulk had shown up on Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends the year before.
Yeah, but look out!
Superheroes on a bus? What are you advertising?
Comic books?
For whatever reasons, the series was brought back the next season, but only in reruns, and fans like myself watched the same 13 episodes patiently, hoping for new episodes that never came. You know, it really was enough to make a Hulk fan Hulk out. Now, the Hulk transformations were awesome, probably the coolest I've ever seen in a cartoon series. But it was interesting that they chose to always give Bruce Banner back his shirt automatically when he changed back from the Hulk. Perhaps the writers intended Banner to change back with his clothes intact as a way of keeping his other identity safe and keeping the story focused on the action. And they probably counted on kids not noticing. Another interesting and really cool fact is that sometimes they used sound effects that sounded a lot like the bionic sound effects used on the $6 Million Man.
Easy now. Should we talk this over? Or?
One thing I loved as a kid, being a big comic book fan, was hearing Stan the Man Lee himself doing the narration.
Rage and his frustration finally trigger the powerful gamma rays in his body, causing thanks to the courage and skill of one lone man.
The voice of Bruce Banner was none other than Michael Bell.
Maybe he does know.
In '73, he was Mark on the Hanna-Barbera series Speed Buggy. From '77 to '84, he played two of his best-known roles, Zan and Gleek on the Super Friends. He was also the voice of the Riddler on Challenge of the Super Friends. He provided the voice of Lex Luthor as a young man in the episode History of Doom. However, Stan Jones was the voice of the adult Luthor throughout the series, but Bell later played Luthor in the 1988 Superman series that aired on CBS. He was also the voice of another DC superhero, Plastic Man, in 1979 to 1981. Throughout the 80s, Michael Bell starred in 4-hit animated series as Grouchy Smurf, Lazy Smurf, and Handy Smurf in The Smurfs, as Prowl, Scrapper, Sideswap, Bombshell, First Aid, Swoop, Gort, Brainstorm, and Dr. Fujiyama, I hope I said all that right, and the Transformers the movie, and as Duke, Blowtorch, and numerous others in G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, and G.I. Joe the movie. Now that I've said that, you probably have the G.I. Joe theme song stuck in your head, and it will stay there for the rest of the day. G.I. Joe, American Hero. And he also did a couple of voices in Voltron, Defender of the Universe.
Hulk helps no one.
The voice of the Hulk was done by Bob Holt, who sadly passed away at age 56. He once complained that Bell got the easy part while he had to do all the difficult growling scenes.
Voice makes Hulk mad. Great babe. Over 40 feet high.
Previously, before working on The Incredible Hulk, he had done the voice of Hanna-Barbera's Gray Babe.
Great babe. Yep, that's me.
Oh no! Hulk, stop! I'm your friend!
Rick Jones was voiced by Michael Horton. Like Michael Bell, he appeared on a lot of classic TV series like Murder, She Wrote, Star Trek Voyagers, and MASH. He did voice work for a lot of cartoons in the 80s like the Transformers, Jim, and G.I. Joe.
Bruce! Oh, thank heaven you're here.
B.J. Ward was the voice of Betty Ross and was also the voice of Scarlet on G.I. Joe and Jana of the Jungle. She was also the voice of Elma Dinkley in Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, The Witch's Ghost, The Alien Invaders, and Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase. Of course, to be honest, I'm not sure what to think about that. I mean, Scooby is a dog. She was Betty Rubble in various Flintstone productions from the 1980s to the early 2000s, and a whole lot of other animated series. The music was one of the most awesome parts of the show. It was composed by Johnny Douglas. It's hard to believe we got such epic sounds from Saturday Morning. He recorded more than 500 tracks for Decca Records, over 80 albums for RCA Records, and provided music for 36 films during his career. In addition to films, Douglas composed and conducted music for television series included Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, Dungeons and Dragons, which was another favorite of mine, The Incredible Hulk, of course, and G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, and the Transformers. So if you grew up in the 80s, the music of Johnny Douglas was a huge part of your childhood. Sadly, he passed away in 2003. Here's something that might shock you if you grew up with the 80s Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. Did you know there was a disco theme with lyrics written by Johnny Douglas and released in 1981? If you'd like to hear it, it's on YouTube, so check it out. One of my most prized possessions is the one-shot comic that was printed the same time the Hulk series was on, based on the episode When Monsters Meet, featuring a battle between the Hulk and Quasimodo, where the action takes place in Paris. It was drawn by Sal Buscema and Steve Mitchell, and written by Bill Mantlo. They drew Betty like they did in the comics at the time, not like they did in the cartoon series. Villains from the comic book showed up, of course, like the Leader, Hydra, the Puppet Master, and Dr. Octopus. The Leader was voiced by the Super Friends Lex Luthor, Stan Jones.
No! Put that down, you emerald idiot!
She-Hulk made what I believe was her first appearance on television. She was a relatively new superhero at the time. I hope you enjoyed this trip back into time, way back to the 1980s, when the world was normal, and, well, it was at least a lot more fun, in a lot of ways. Share your memories of the Hulk and your favorite 80s cartoons. Please hit the like and subscribe if you haven't already. Be sure and check out the other videos here featuring funny characters, parodies, and check out my recent video on Thundar the Barbarian and Gilligan's Planet. They are part of a new series of videos I'm doing on classic Saturday morning cartoons and shows. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, whatever you do, don't make the Hulk angry. You wouldn't like him when he's angry.